What's up YouTube, it's your boy Strong. We're back with another video. When I first started collecting, I asked myself a question. What's a good statue size to collect? Is it 1/5 scale, 1/6 scale, 1/4, 1/3? I don't know. I didn't know if I should be collecting one versus the other. I had no idea. I thought it would be a great idea to make a video and let's talk about it. But before we do that, make sure you like and subscribe and let's get into it. Alright, so how I got started is I first saw my first statue at a Dragon Con down in Atlanta, Georgia. I asked it was one of the displays, and I asked the guy that was displaying a case, I said, hey, where did you get this from? And he said, I got it from this website called sideshow.com. And I said, I had no idea what it was. So I went on the website, they had all these different statues, all these different shapes and sizes. Different lines like Marvel, DC, movies, you name it, right? Pop culture, all types of stuff. I had no idea. I was like a kid in the candy shop, just so many different things to look at and touch and play with and try to see what was going on. So, I had no idea. Back to the topic, I had no idea what size was a good size to get, right? I saw things like busts, life-size busts, which are, usually just like the head and the shoulders of a sculpt. And they are actually a good size. They usually take up a premium format, which is usually like around 1/4 scale, a premium format and a half. And they, a good size. I never thought that I would collect a bust because I actually thought they looked creepy and dumb. But I actually, the more I looked at them and the more I discovered, the more I wanted them. So I think now I'm about to actually get my first bust. Now, as far as the shapes and sizes of statues, I think it all depends on what your preference is and what your space and what you can afford. Those are the three things, right? Number one is your space. So if you have a ton of space, you may be able to collect something like a 1/3 and 1/4 scales, right? And and be fine. But if you don't have a lot of space, a 1/3 scale may not be for you, or you may be able to just want to do a just maybe only 1/3 scale, right? Because you don't have the space for it. Now, if you have the funds, before I back up, before I get into that, the one thing about 1/3 scales is 1/3 scales can cost a lot of money. So 1/3 scale versus something like a 1/5 or 1/6, you can get a 1/3 scale for say $1,000, or you can get a 1/6 or 1/5 for $100 and get 10 of those for that same price, and you can have a mini collection just off that money alone, right? And what I've seen is the 1/6 and the 1/5 scales tend to sell a little bit more, just because people, they're much more affordable, they're much smaller, and people just, would just be more prone to get them, right? Something like a 1/5 or a 1/6, I would put something like on my desk here, a quarter scale, 1/4 scale, or a 1/3 scale. I wouldn't want to put here on this desk here that I have right beside me. It will take up entirely too much space. I would put that in my man cave. Now, moving along. Another thing you have to consider whenever you're looking at statues is, what do you want to collect? What size works best for you? So going back to your space, if you don't have a lot of space, you may want to start looking at 1/5 or 1/6 scale figures, because if you don't have a lot of space, you want to get a bunch of 1/6 and 1/5 scales, because if you don't have a lot of space, if you get 1/3 scale, that'll be all you can place, right? You have to sell it and then get another 1/3 and sell that one, get another one, right? And you don't want to have to do that. But so if you don't have a lot of space, if you can fit 10, 15 1/5 to 1/6 scale figures, do that, right? If you have a ton of space, you may be able to do a lot of 1/3 scales. And then you may be able to want to mix and match with the 1/3 and the 1/4. The 1/4 look really, really good. You get They are a great size with a great amount of detail as well. It's a great medium for beginners. I logged into a forum and I talked to a statue collecting community, and I asked them what was their favorite statue size to collect. 95% of the people said 1/4 scale. Reason being is because of their budget and the space that they have, right? And also too, what they like to collect usually comes in a 1/4 scale, so they just get it, right? That's another thing I want to talk about. Most of the time, whenever you're collecting, you don't want to collect things that you don't want, right? You don't want to just grab things just because it looks cool. If you don't feel that connection to that statue, you're probably going to end up selling it later on down the road. So you should collect only things that you want. If it's a 1/6 scale, get that. If it's a 1/5 or 1/4 or whatever, get whatever you are passionate about and what you really love. If you see a 1/3 scale that looks cool and you're not, you just think it looks cool and you don't really care about the character or whatever the case may be, you may get that 1/3 scale and 6 months down the road you hate it or you don't really care to look at it anymore, right? And you'll end up selling it. And when you try to sell it, you may have a hard time, and that's a whole different topic. So back to the point is only collect what you like and what you're passionate about, right? One last thing. Speaking to my point earlier, you want to collect things that look good together. So you don't want to start collecting 1/3 scales and then run out of room, and then you may only have a little bit of space for a 1/6 or 1/5 scales, because in my opinion, a 1/3 scale sitting next to a 1/6 scale is just not going to look good to me, right? So if you want to start a collection, I think that you should, kind of decide based on your budget and your space how you want your collection to look. If you want to stay with the 1/5 and 1/6 scale figures and just start there, that's fine. If you want to do the 1/4 and the 1/4 and the 1/3, you can do that as well. There's also the half scale that I didn't talk about earlier. The half scale that is like literally half the scale of a person, and I would probably never get one of those. I don't have any interest in getting that. Reason being is because I just don't want something that big, and I also don't have the space for that. And I also feel like if I were to, I feel like I would forget that I have a half scale and walk into a room and with the light off and think that someone was in my house, right? And no one wants that. So I have no interest in getting a half scale. I have seen life-size figures and I have seen half-size figures, and I don't like, most of the ones I've seen, I don't like their poses. I don't like the way they're posed, their stance. I don't, the base, because it's so big, there's no real base to it. I'm a sucker for a base, so that's why I would never really look at a half-size or a life-size figure. And they just look too creepy for me, in my opinion. It's like Gal Gadot's in your house just chilling. It's like, whoa. But anyway, I don't think that there's a true one answer to answer this question. It all depends on three things. What is your preference? What is your budget? And how much space do you have? Once you evaluate those three things, you'll then be able to decide what works best for you. So let me know in the comments what works best for you in your statue collection. I want to know. I want to know what you're into collecting. Is it 1/4? Is it 1/3? Do you like the smaller things? That's fine too. Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me on another video, and we'll see you in the next one. What's up, you? Hold on, wait.